I think two things started it off. One was that several fans wrote to me to ask about Otori Takeyoshi, who is the founder of the Otori clan and who was a sort of legend to the young boys at the beginning of Heaven's Net is Wide. And I'd always wanted to go back and look at some of the origins of the sword Jato, of the tribe, and so on. And then when I was in Japan in 2010, some friends took me to see two different sorts of dancing. One was the deer dancing in Iwate, and the other was called the monster dance, Oni Kenbai in Kitakami. And these were such wonderful illustrations of how the old still persists in modern Japan, and I felt it was like seeing backwards in time. I wanted to write about somebody who lived in that world. I did and I didn't. I felt that the characters had stopped talking to me, so I was quite happy to leave it at the 5 books. But actually I had thought that when I finished the trilogy, and then I went back to Japan and I found that I had a whole lot more to write. So I think every time I go back to Japan, I seem to get re-inspired to write more. I'm going back again in March, so who knows what will happen after that. Apart from being there and walking around in forests and looking at mountainsides and all of that sort of thing, and going to the wonderful Monster Museum, which was unlike anything else I've ever seen, I read a lot of books. I sort of immersed myself in the warrior tales, like Tales of the Heike and The Revenge of the Soga Brothers. And then I read a lot about esoteric Buddhism, a lot about daily life in what would be 12th century Japan if it was in a real world, and looked at art, looked at movies set in that period and so on. It's a kind of a case of, as I said, immersing yourself in a world, and then when I sit down and start writing, I sort of put all of that away and just write out of what has been stored up in my mind. I find it very hard to answer that question because it seems to me as if it's always been there. Even when I was a child, I found Japan fascinating. And as soon as I was able to learn more about it, I did. So I've been following Japanese history and culture almost all my life. I don't know why it should be like that. I think maybe all of us have in us various worlds. You know, we all contain multitudes, and one of my multitudes is the world of Japan. Well, the Otori books were set around the end of the 15th century, so just before the first foreigners arrived in Japan, or the first Westerners. And this series is about 300 years earlier, so it's around the time of the struggles between the two dominant clans, the Heike and the Genji, and the various struggles between the succession of emperors and so on. But of course it's a mythical world, it's invented, so there's no straight parallels with history. Again, I find this very hard to answer, but what I really like is to be with my Japanese friends when they do wonderful Japanese home cooking. And it's not as if it's any one dish, it's just a whole range of lovely things that you eat together. I do like sushi, and I like tempura. I love karaage, which is a sort of fried chicken, deep fried chicken. But in fact, I like most Japanese food, but I'm just trying to think of something I don't like very much. I don't think I can think of anything. Somewhat more than I'd like, since she seems to be very keen to be involved in everything. There's always sitting on things. Lately she thinks her favourite spot is on my knee while I'm trying to type on the computer, which is an extremely difficult position to work in. I love seeing fan artwork. I think it's so exciting. I was thinking about this earlier today, and one of the first things such a long time ago now, it seems, that when Across the Nightingale Floor first came out, some boys who can only have been about 12 or 13 did a little reenactment of the scene where Shigeru finds Takeo, and they put it up on YouTube. It's just absolutely gorgeous, and I thought that is such a wonderful thing to see. Yeah, I love fan art.